Just 2 more rounds to go now of the 2016 FF1M Championship, and it's a round where both championships, the drivers and the teams, can quite easily be decided. More on that in a moment, because we're returning to Bahrain for the first time since 2011, a race which saw Nico Rosberg win for Shake and Bake as part of a Shake and Bake 1-2. His teammate was Sebastian Vettel. Quite a team, that, Rosberg and Vettel. And there's a look at the circuit. We're racing on the Grand Prix layout, 5.4 kilometres long, 15 turns and 56 laps, 2 or 3 stops expected, so once again we're having a mixture. Previous winners include Lewis Hamilton in 2009, then 2006 that was won by the Shannon of Vitantonio Liuzzi, 2005 was Mark Webber, and the very first race in 2004 was won by 3-time FF1M champion Jarno Trulli, driving for FJR at the time. And this poses as a good circuit for comparison in lap times because the first pre-season test was held on the GP layout. Fastest time in pre-season was Lewis Hamilton with a 1 minute 29.211, and just to tell you how much the cars have developed since then, free practice 1, the fastest time was set by Nico Rosberg, a 1 minute 27.890. Free practice 2, 126.948 by Nico Hulkenberg, and qualifying, well, the upshot of it, every team has improved by at least 2 seconds since pre-season testing, one team by nearly 6 seconds, that being FJR. Their pre-season fastest time was a 131.972, in qualifying it was a 126.187, and that was good enough for Kevin Magnussen to take his 6th career pole position. Just like in Suzuka the previous race, Daniel Ricciardo will start 2nd, and just like Suzuka, Tony Coast will start 3rd on the grid. There is one of the championship contenders 4th, Sergio Perez. He needs a bit of a miracle if he's going to challenge Lewis Hamilton for the championship. Speaking of which, he starts 6th alongside Fernando Alonso in the Exolite. Still looking for his 1,000th point is Alonso. Row 4 filled up by Nico Rosberg and Väinö Kimminen in the Tornado. Then Kimi Räikkönen in the top 10 for the first time in a while, alongside fellow Finn Valtteri Bottas in the GRM. 3 Finns in the 8th, 9th and 10th position. Don't see that very often. Cooper Lee starts 11th for Mitchell, ahead of Nico Hulkenberg in 12th. Then Carlos Sainz 13th, ahead of Felipe Massa 14th on the grid. 15th, who have we got in 15th place? Well, it is the Malaysian Grand Prix winner Sam Bird, ahead of Roman Grosjean, not qualifying particularly well in the other Exolite. Both Exolites on the softs, so it doesn't spell well for Grosjean's race. Then it's Noah's Ark from 9, 10 and 11th rows, Verne and Clark in the Gajera 17th and 18th, Shake and Bake 19th and 20th with Vettel ahead of Nolan Bryant, and then Willows in the back row, and it's Max Verstappen ahead of Stoffel Vandoorne once again. So the championship permutation, well, Lewis Hamilton holds 101 points, Perez 84 and Magnussen 81. Basically, a second will guarantee Hamilton the championship no matter what happens to Perez and Magnussen. The permutations are a little bit more complicated the lower down they go. But here we are, under the floodlights, the 5 lights go out. That was a very quick launch from Sergio Perez from 4th on the grid, but it hasn't worked out too well because he's dropped down to 6th, but the front, it's Kevin Magnussen with Daniel Da Costa, side-by-side contact between the two already, and Da Costa has lost a lot of positions having spun, and it's Fernando Alonso who takes the lead of the race in the Exolite from Nico Rosberg. Drama at the first corner already, I wasn't expecting that. And we'll have to catch a replay of what happens, but the upshot of it is Magnussen down to 5th and Da Costa down a lot more than that, is down to last. And that's going to compromise Magnussen's chance of a challenge of the championship. For Magnussen, if Hamilton doesn't score any points, then Magnussen can win the championship with a 1st and 2nd. He'll need Perez to not score very many points compared to Magnussen if that was to happen, but after that first corner, well, seems unlikely now, but here we go. We got Rosberg in 2nd from Väinö Kimminen up to 3rd in the Tornado, and if it stays like that, Tornado will comfortably wrap up the championship. But in terms of the Drivers' Championship, Perez 4th. Well, with Hamilton 8th, Perez could win the championship with a 1st and 4th if Hamilton doesn't score any points, but with Hamilton 8th that would be enough. But up the inside of Rosberg goes Väinö Kymmenen, and up into 2nd place, nicely on the brakes into the final corner, but Rosberg's back into the slipstream of the Tornado driver, so he could challenge back down the start-finish straight. And here comes the slipstream, Alonso with the fastest lap, with it being only the first lap. But here comes Rosberg up the inside into the first hairpin and turns sharply, still side by side, but Väinö Kymmenen hanging on to 2nd place. Now, can Kymmenen pull away? He can indeed. And can he set off after Fernando Alonso? There's brakes, lock-up in the background. I wonder who's had a bit of a lock-up, but let's have a look. Nolan Bryant's had a very good start from 20th on the grid up to 15th, and he's trying to challenge Valtteri Bottas into turn 4. Contact between the two, and both getting involved in a bit of shenanigans, and Bryant scuppering his race. And let's see the start. Great launch from Da Costa. Ricciardo had a very poor start from 2nd on the grid, and Da Costa getting up alongside. Now let's see what happens. On the brakes, the side-by-side, Da Costa carried far too much speed into the corner, so a bit unnecessary from Da Costa, I have to say. Trying to wash Magnussen right around the outside, and it just backfired badly. Now, Rosberg, this is versus Perez. The Tornadoes are looking pretty quick in the early stages of the race, and Perez up the inside into the final corner and taking 3rd place. Well, he's not giving up on his championship challenge, and with Hamilton has just overtaken Raikkonen. So as Perez is on the move, unfortunately for himself, Hamilton's on the move as well, as Alonso sets another fastest lap. So he's the quickest driver on the circuit at this stage, as here is Nico Hülkenberg looking to challenge Jean-Eric Vergne for 10th place. I haven't done a recap of Suzuka in the previous race, which saw Daniel Ricciardo win, and inheriting that when Väinö Kymmenen made an unforced error at the S's in the closing stages. There is Kymmenen, and he's catching up to Fernando Alonso for the race lead, so Kymmenen looking to try and take his first win of the season and make it 11 different winners. That has never happened in FF1M before. And exiting the final corner, and surely this will be a quicker lap compared to Fernando Alonso. The gap was 1.4 seconds as this lap started, and the gap still 1.4, so just a few hundredths quicker than Alonso on that lap. But yes, Väinö Kymmenen made a mistake in the closing stages of the Japanese Grand Prix and ended up finishing 4th behind Ricciardo, race winner. That driver there, Nico Hülkenberg, who managed to make a one-stop strategy work. And it was quite an understated race from Hülkenberg, and same could be said for Valtteri Bottas, who took GRM's first podium finish of the season at the Japanese Grand Prix. Here is Hülkenberg looking to try and outbrake Vergne into the first hairpin, and is he going to do it, or is the Hülkenberg still there on the left? He is indeed, so battle for 10th still going quite aggressively, but clean so far, which cannot be said for Nolan Bryant and Valtteri Bottas' race, and also Da Costa and Kevin Magnussen. I will maintain blame on Tony Coast for that one. That's the bias side of me coming out. Up the inside into the final corner of Jean-Eric Vergne goes Nico Hülkenberg, but he can't make that one stick. That Gajera's pretty quick in a straight line. Always has been with that Mugen engine, but Gajera having made the least gains since pre-season tests. They were only 2.112 seconds quicker in qualifying compared to their fastest time in pre-season testing, so that just shows you how much of the aero they've ignored. And we've got a pit stop due for Daniel Ricciardo, 6th place, and we are expecting 2 or 3 stops, so this is pretty early, and no doubt that'll be a 3-stop strategy for Ricciardo as he comes into the pits underneath the darkness of the Sakhir circuit. And a very slow pit lane, just 60 kilometers an hour, so 3-stop strategy definitely doesn't look like the optimum strategy, considering how slow you run in the pit lane. You see 60 kilometers an hour at Melbourne as well, but that was all a 3-stop strategy race. A couple more pitters. There's Hülkenberg coming into the pits, and James Clark as well in the background you can see there, being serviced by Gajera Mechanics. Out of the pits in 18th place goes Daniel Ricciardo, so pit stop's taking quite a long time. Now, Fernando Alonso also looks to be on a 3-stop strategy, And behind him, he's got the 2 Tornadoes looming large on the Spaniard. The Spaniard who sits on 998 points in his career, looking for 1,000 points, and being in the race lead will certainly help his cause. And Kimmonen also into the pits. Now, it's a little bit of a pit stop race. X-Lite need a good stop if they're going to maintain position ahead of the Tornado that's just pulled into his box. Kimmonen on the hard tyres, Alonso running the softs. Perez takes the lead for the moment, and coming out of the pits, I think Rosberg was coming into the pits, as is Kevin Magnussen. So the front lot taking 3-stop strategies. Now, where is the X-Lite? He's rejoined ahead, so Alonso maintaining track position over Väinö Kimmonen as he exits the pits. That's 5th place. Now is it going to be 6th place, because there comes... He is in 6th place. He's lost position to Sam Bird and maintains 6th ahead of Roman Grosjean. There's an interesting battle for 4th in the team's championship between Andrew Pedersen and X-Lite, and it's to and fro over the past couple of races. Bird's win in Malaysia put Pedersen up to 4th, then Andrew's win at Suzuka. Oh, that's going to be tight, nearly... Oh, and there's going to be contact. Hulkenberg versus one of the Gajeras. Is that Hulkenberg finally trying to get past Verne in a sort of messy formation? It was Carlos Sainz they were trying to avoid at pit exit as well, as into the pits comes Sergio Perez. Temporary race leader, but probably on a 3-stop strategy. Yes, definitely 3 stops. Not a lot of fuel going on at all. As out of the pits. 6.1 seconds, so quicker than Kimmonen. And who's that? That's Lee coming down the start-finish straight as Bird comes into the pits. And here comes Alonso on the right-hand side. Where does the pit lane speed limiter come off? It comes off there. And has Alonso jumped him? He has. As so has Grosjean. But Perez has jumped Väinö Kimmonen. So Perez doing the overcut on his Finnish teammates to take what should be a net 2nd place once the 2 Mitchells come into the pits. And Grosjean. 2 Mitchells not having pitted. They could be 2-stopping, and another lap has gone and not come into the pits. So has Hamilton pulled a bit of a blinder on strategy? We may find out once they come into the pits, but he's got quite a large gap over Alonso. That'll obviously disappear, but Hamilton's into the pits now as Perez takes 4th place off of Roman Grosjean, his fellow class of 2010 graduate, alongside Nico Hulkenberg. Alonso setting a fastest lap of the race as he now tries to close in on race leader Cooper Lee. Now, how much fuel did Hamilton take on? Let's see Ricciardo versus Vettel. Former shake and bake teammates getting into bother with each other, and Ricciardo shoving... It's actually Nolan Bryant, not Sebastian Vettel. And they're not former teammates, but Ricciardo rudely getting past Bryant for position. Now then, the gap between Perez and Alonso, 3.6 seconds as they cross the line to start lap 20, and that was a bit of a wide line for Perez. As we look at Hulkenberg, this will be versus Sam Bird, and a bit of caution as Bird does a bit of shimmying under braking for the first corner, as Hulkenberg set his personal best lap of that race, a 1:28.0. That's some 8/10 slower than Alonso's best effort, but Alonso is being caught up by Perez in this second of 4 stints, all separated by 3 pit stops by the looks of it. Through the S's of, that's 7 and 8, and it's 6 and 7, this is turn 8, a very tight hairpin, a bit of an anomaly of a corner this, but this next couple of corners, this is quite tricky, because you brake in the middle of the left-hand corner of turn 9 and then brake hard for the very tight turn 10. Now onto the support straight. There's a slowing car. Is that Cooper Lee? Cooper Lee with a mechanical problem and pulling out of the race. So Mitchell's chance of staying in Constructors' Teams Championship contention taking a bit of a dip with a mechanical failure for the Australian, the man from Darwin. Oh, that's Cooper Lee having pulled off in a very unusual place. And that's going to be very tricky to retrieve, so hopefully no cars will careen into him. And here comes the Marshall, very brave Marshall, pushing the Mitchell out of the way. It was a puncture, so unfortunate for Cooper. Here comes Nico Hulkenberg up the inside of Sam Bird this time. Is he going to make it into the first corner? And he tries to hang on around the outside of 2, and he's got it. Hulkenberg up to 10th for FJR. Hulkenberg on his way to Gajera next season, where he will be partnering. He'll be partnering Alessandro Farina, the FF2M graduate who just lost out on the FF2M championship thanks to an inspired Väinö Kymmänen who had a near perfect weekend at Portimao, just the fastest lap short of taking the full whack. We look at race leader Fernando Alonso. Rounding turn 13, he is due in the pits at the end of this lap, and Perez has been catching him, and we have seen already Perez perform the overcut on Väinö Kymmänen. Can he do the same to Fernando Alonso? Let's see Alonso turn right into the pit lane entrance, and Sergio Perez following him in, so no chance of the overcut, but this time a pit stop race, once again between an Excellite and a Tornado. This time around it's the other Tornado, and this time around Väinö Kymmänen going a bit longer and taking the temporary race lead. As Alonso trundles down the pits at 60 km an hour, but Perez is already in his pit box, taking on a bit more fuel, and in 7.1 seconds he's away. Now, keep an eye out in front, where is Alonso? Here he comes. 6.1 seconds is his stop, and he maintains track position over Sergio Perez. 1 second quicker than Perez in that pit stop, so once again, excellent mechanics doing a very, very good job. And he on course maybe to take another victory, but 3 stops is not the favourable strategy round this slow pit lane of Bahrain. The lap after Sergio Perez pitted, here comes Väinö Kymmänen. He's at turn 11 at the moment. A fairly quick corner that gets even quicker and open at the exit, then the flat out right of 12 into 13, which tightens and then opens on the exit, and it's a fairly medium speed corner. Quite tricky, and it's easy to run wide at the exit. Now, down the final back straight, and that's a corner where we've seen some overtaking and some contact between Ricciardo and Bryant. As Väinö Kymmänen comes into the pits from the race lead, he was about 4 or so seconds behind his teammate before Perez came into the pits. So let's see how quick Väinö Kymmenen's pit stop is, and if he has been able to do something about his teammate. But his teammate is the one who's holding him up. It's a Pedersen, and there's Magnussen as well, so not a good pit exit for Väinö Kymmänen as Rosberg and Magnussen delayed him a bit. It's Lewis Hamilton who takes the lead of the race, probably on that 2-stop strategy, and Ricciardo up to second, so if they are 2-stopping, then they've just gained track position over the 3 stoppers, compared to Alonso, Perez and Kymmänen, and Rosberg and Magnussen. Here comes Jean-Eric Vergne coming down the start-finish straight, and into the first corner, Rosberg just stays ahead of James Clark, and Magnussen does not get the jump on Clark, so that's not worked out well for the Dane, whose race definitely compromised by Tony Coast. Now, this is Verstappen versus Ricciardo into the final corner, and once again Verstappen upside down! No wheels lost though, so maybe they can right him up and he can get going again, but he's dropped way down the order, and that's technically an overtake attempt under yellow flags from Hulkenberg, but he didn't quite get past Rosberg, so in the real world he would have just about have gotten away with that, and they're just writing Verstappen over, so I think Verstappen may be able to rejoin, so very unusual incident there, and once again triggered by Daniel Ricciardo. Not the first time he's done that into the final corner, but is Hulkenberg going to do something into the final? Oh yes, he has done. It shunts the GRM out of the way. Is that Bottas or is that Sainz? I think it's Sainz he just shunted. So a rude one from Nico Hulkenberg, and he may get his just desserts, because here comes Sam Bird and Jean-Eric Vergne 3 wide. That is not going to work out at all. Predictably it doesn't, and once again Hulkenberg getting away with one there, and the main loser out of that, Jean-Eric Vergne. But yeah, that was always going to end in tears. And Hulkenberg maintaining 12th place. Into the pits comes Romain Grosjean. He's had a bit of an unusual strategy. He was quite late in pitting out of the main lot, and this is kind of nowhere in terms of whether it's a 2 or a 3-stop strategy. Keep an eye out on the fuel gauge at the top as to how much fuel they put on board. But lap 34, Vettel also into the pits, and 27 laps. That's going to the end of the race, so a very unusual 2-stop strategy that Romain Grosjean is taking on. Could give him track position, but his soft tyres will be absolutely shagged come the end of the race. And there you can see Vettel coming out of the pits in the background. Now Grosjean rejoining in amongst Sam Bird and James Clark, splits the two. So Grosjean in a Brit sandwich. Sam Bird from London, James Clark from Altrincham, Cheshire. And up the road you can see Sainz and Hulkenberg. Here comes Clark up against Grosjean into turn 4, and that's a position gain for James Clark, 13th place. At the front it's Hamilton who leads. It's only 4 seconds though, the gap between himself and Fernando Alonso. So Alonso definitely catching up, and in that first sector, which consists of turns 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5 kink before the S's of 6 and 7, Alonso took 0.8 of a second out of Lewis Hamilton. So this is the two-stop strategy starting to come apart a little bit. There is Alonso exiting turn 10 now, and just behind Alonso is Sergio Perez. 1.7 seconds the gap between Alonso and Perez. But Hamilton should have track position by the time all the pit stops are done. It just depends on if Alonso and Perez can do something with their lower fuel load to try and overcut Hamilton, potential championship elect. Further back we've got Väinö Kymmenen in 4th place, with Nico Rosberg 5th, Kevin Magnussen in 6th, only 1.5 seconds behind Rosberg. Daniel Ricciardo and Kimi Räikkönen completing the top 8. We haven't seen much of Kimi Räikkönen, but qualified well in the Meister, and he's in the points, and that'll be good for him, because he's on his way to X-Lite next season. Most experienced driver on the grid, as it was Hamilton coming into the pits. That's why Alonso is back in the lead, and he's got traffic in front of him in the form of Nolan Bryant. And into turn 4 comes Alonso. But here's Väinö Kymmenen, and he's going to come into the pits. That was a very, very short third stint for Väinö Kymmenen. And he's going to do quite a few laps in the final stint. So he's looking to try and use the undercut to try and gain some time on Alonso and Perez before those two make their final pit stops. And no change of the rest of the top 8. So Väinö Kymmenen is going to trigger the final pit stops out of the 3 stoppers. Turns right into the pits. I'm going to keep an eye on where Romain Grosjean is, but I think they've built up such a gap over the X-Lite driver, who's just lost a position to Tony Coast for 13th. So I don't think Grosjean's two-stop strategy is working out particularly well. Ongoing new set of hard tyres for Kymmenen, and that's a much better stop, 5.6 seconds, and enough fuel to go to the end of the race for the Tornado driver. More mechanics coming out, and it's for Kevin Magnussen. He's going to try and do the undercut on Nico Rosberg. And where is Lewis Hamilton? He's already gone past, so Hamilton gaining track position over Väinö Kymmenen. There's an Andrew coming up on the right, it's Daniel Ricciardo. So Kymmenen rejoins in 5th place, but is Ricciardo going to get a run on the fin coming out of 3? I think he's just a bit too far back. And yeah, Kymmenen holding on. Now we can use his new tyres to effect and to try and catch up to that driver there, Sergio Perez. He's 1.4 seconds behind Fernando Alonso. And these two are still pretty close, but now that's crucial. Alonso carries on while Sergio Perez makes that earlier pit stop. So into the pits. And he's going to try and use his new tyres to try and get the jump on Fernando Alonso in the final round of pit stops. Into his box. He's got to hope that Nico Rosberg isn't pitting at the same time, otherwise that will scupper his pit exit. But here we go, it's a slowish stop, that's 8.2 seconds, not a quick stop at all. Alonso can push and maybe pit at the end of this lap, and maybe still maintain the lead ahead of Sergio Perez. Coming down the right-hand side. Who is that coming down the right-hand side? That's Lewis Hamilton coming down the right-hand side. So, here comes Lewis Hamilton getting the jump on Sergio Perez for 3rd place, and Hamilton has got fuel to the end of the race, so it's all about the tyres now. Perez has got about 4 or 5 laps younger tyres compared to Lewis Hamilton, both the same compounds, so they should be consistent. So it's purely about the age. So, Ricciardo versus Kymmenen. So, Kymmenen not particularly quick in this heavier fuel load. So, yeah, Ricciardo putting pressure on the fin, going through the S's, and got alongside him at turn 4. Into the pits comes Carlos Sainz. He was running in 11th place. And he'll do well to score points from there. But here, Daniel Ricciardo, he's into the pits at the end of this lap. So, also 3 stopping, just like the majority of the field, including Fernando Alonso into the pits. Crucial pit stop coming up now for Exolite. And we've seen how good the Exolite mechanics have been in this race so far. 2 very quick sub 6 second stops. On go some new tyres. And how quick is this one? It's not especially fast, but about a second quicker than Sergio Perez. And Rosberg into the pits as well. Now where's Lewis Hamilton coming down the main straight? I can't see Lewis. There's Lewis Hamilton. Alonso's going to get the jump on him. Fernando Alonso with a crucial set of in-laps. And he's maintained track position and the lead over Lewis Hamilton. And with fresher tyres, I'd be expecting Alonso to pull away. And Daniel Ricciardo making that pit stop from, it was 6th place. But now Väinö Kiminen's gained a place on Nico Rosberg. And I think Rosberg has maintained track position over Kevin Magnussen, because Rosberg, having made his pit stop, has rejoined fairly comfortably ahead of the Dane. So it seems as if we're having a bit of a mixture of new tyres versus heavier fuel load and low fuel load as to which is the better combination. But yeah, the overcut seems to have proved a bit better in this race. And as Alonso got some traffic in front of him, well, the gap between himself and Lewis Hamilton, it was 1 second as they crossed the first sector point. And it's coming up a bit. It's now 1.6 seconds. Jean-Eric Vergne looking to make an overtake on Stoffel Van Dorn and hitting him. Now he's trying to carry too much speed and trying to squeeze Van Dorn out to the outside, but Van Dorn wasn't having much of that. And Alonso lapping the Willows driver, and trying to anyway, going through the S's, and that's allowed Hamilton to close up a little bit. Quite a lot actually. It's more than half the gap, but now Hamilton has to deal with that traffic. Willows getting a little bit in the way, and now Sergio Perez's turn to lap Van Dorn. Or is that Verstappen? It might be Verstappen actually. It's one of the Willows anyway. And Alonso. Oh no, Fernando Alonso! Oh, mechanical problem for the Exolites. That is heartbreak. That is just as heartbreaking as Hulkenberg's in Portimao. Did everything right, Alonso. You can see the brakes on fire almost. Now, is that suspension dragging on the ground? We'll find out, but yeah, the marshal pushing away a broken X-Light. It's a puncture, so yeah, front left puncture, and it was causing a... Oh, Lewis Hamilton! Lewis Hamilton, there goes his opportunity to win the championship in this race. Another mechanical failure for a Mitchell. Double retirement for Mitchell. That confirms Tornado winning the team's championship, because Mitchell can't score and they needed to outscore Tornado. But there you go. Right in front of you. And is that another one? Who is that? That is Lewis Hamilton, having pulled off. I was getting a bit worried about all the attrition rate that was happening. But yeah, pulling away the Mitchell... pulling off in pretty much the same place, and it's another gearbox problem, exactly the same as what happened in Malaysia. So, what does that do for the championship if it stays like this? Well, Sergio Perez leading would move to within 5 points of Lewis Hamilton. But if something happens to Perez, then that's his championship gone, so Tornado not out of the woods. And we're looking at the battle for 8th between Kimi Räikkönen and Nico Hulkenberg. Meanwhile, what happens to Kevin Magnussen? Well, he needs to finish 2nd if he's to stand any chance of maintaining a championship challenge. He needs a miracle. He needs a miracle. As here comes Hulkenberg versus Räikkönen down the start-finish straight. They're side-by-side. Still side-by-side, but hitting the brakes. And Hulkenberg should take 8th place off of the Finn, and indeed he does. And Hulkenberg is 2.5 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel. Can he make it 2 points for himself? And yes, well, here is Sainz versus, is that Nolan Bryant? Yep, it's Sainz versus Bryant into the first corner. Battle for 10th place between those two. Scherkenbeck have had a pretty good race actually. Vettel's up to 7th, but now he's coming under pressure from Nico Hulkenberg. And Bryant was battling with Sainz, so Vettel and Bryant taking 2-stop strategies has given them track position, but now they're struggling a bit with their older tyres. And Vettel has got Hulkenberg right behind him in the slipstream, and here comes Hulkenberg. Can he outbrake the German? German on German into the final corner. Indeed he can. A clean manoeuvre this time. as Vettel maintained some slipstream? Well, let's see. As we go down the start-finish straight, this is lap 53 they're entering, and Vettel does have a chance to try and come back at Hulkenberg into the first corner. Hulkenberg moving into the middle of the circuit to defend his position, running a bit wide at the first apex, but uses traction from the soft tyres to try and pull away at turn 3, but Vettel's still in the slipstream. Vettel looking to try and challenge into turn 4, but I think he's just a bit too far back. Hulkenberg just in check. Now, is this coming onto the final lap for Sergio Perez? Indeed it is. So, a bit of a miracle result for Sergio Perez, because Hamilton was on course to win the championship before his mechanical drama. I think for a moment, after Alonso had retired, Hamilton had won the championship there and then, but the Mitchell gearbox proving to be an Achilles heel once again, just like in Sepang. And if it stays like this, we are going to have a championship showdown at Macau, and it will be between two drivers, Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez. Just half a lap to go now for Checo as he rounds turn 8. He's coming up to lap Nolan Bryant. That is 12th place Nolan Bryant. Vettel holding on to 8th, but I don't think Raikkonen's too far back, so that will be a nice little battle to keep an eye out on. Grosjean's two-stop strategy has worked to some extent. He's actually in 6th place, and I think ultimately it was Alonso's race to win and very unlucky to suffer that puncture. It's quite an abrasive surface around here, and new tyres can have an effect, but you've got to be careful with them. Now then, just this shake and bake to lap, but I think Perez is going to do that up the inside of Bryant in the final corner to put the lap on him, and amazingly, despite a 17-point buffer to Lewis Hamilton, that goes down to 5 because Sergio Perez takes his 5th win of the season. Could be one of his more important wins he's ever scored, and he moves to within 5 points of Lewis Hamilton. Coming home in second is Väinö Kymmenen, so it's a Tornado 1-2, which cements Tornado's team's championship win over Mitchell. Third, and a good result for Nico Rosberg in his penultimate FF1M race, before retiring to probably becoming an influencer. Good luck with that, Nico. Just 2 seconds behind Nico was Kevin Magnussen, pole sitter. Knocked out in the first corner by Da Costa, but may not have been the quickest in the race anyway, so a sorry way for Magnussen to have his championship ended, but it's been a good season for him nonetheless. And that battle for 4th in the championship, well, Rosberg, Ricciardo and Grosjean all scoring points, so it's still pretty tight between those. Ricciardo 5th, Grosjean 6th, Hulkenberg and Vettel completing the top 8. And here you can see 3 big retirements in the context of the race and the championship. Cooper Lee, the first one to suffer a puncture around half distance, making Mitchell's championship challenge more difficult, and then it ended completely when Hamilton had his gearbox failure. And of course the other big one in the context of the race, and for 4th in the championship actually, was Fernando Alonso, suffering that puncture. And Verstappen did make it to the end despite being flipped over. And there is the championship. Hamilton still on 101 points, but now Sergio Perez is only 5 points behind. Hamilton can win it with a second at Macau, but Perez, he does need to win, but there's some permutations which I won't bore you with right now. Magnussen 3rd, and that's a guaranteed 3rd in the championship with Thomas Gonzalez's controversial absence. Gonzalez guaranteed 4th in the championship though. Ricciardo 5th with 56 points. Been a good season for Andrew. They're tied with Pedersen now for 4th in the championship, but it could have easily been Exelite holding 4th had it not been for Alonso's unlucky puncture. And 190 points for Tornado, some 44 points ahead of Mitchell, guarantees them the championship, and FJR basically guaranteed 3rd, as Mitchell guaranteed 2nd now, so the top 3 all settled. The main interest is the battle for 4th, and whether Shake and Bake can hold on ahead of Gajera for 7th. So that was the penultimate race of the FF1M season. We got one more to go, and it'll be an FF1M first, the first race at Macau. So we shall see you for then.